Welcome to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Detroit Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold on a post-Thanksgiving weekend as we fly quickly towards the winter meetings a week from Tuesday. We're here to talk some baseball, if people can get in the Christmas spirit of baseball. And how was your Thanksgiving, Ev?
Yeah, Thanksgiving was awesome. Probably highlight of it was a self-designed euchre tournament at the Petzold house. It was my grandparents, my parents, Savannah and me, my sister and my brother-in-law, and then my brother and his girlfriend. Every couple put $10 in the pot, so it was $50 winner take all. Savannah and I were knocked out in the first round, which is disappointing. My parents won the tournament, but we all had a blast, whether it was playing euchre, eating good food, watching the Lions win. Family time is the best time. Thanksgiving was great. We really enjoyed it. How about you?
Had a great time. Got to spend time with my family, my son, and especially the world famous Braden Michael Gorash, who I got to sit next to in the movie theater and watch Moana 2. And it was heartwarming for me. What a boy. Can't wait. Pretty awesome. Let's jump into the baseball stuff. The Dodgers, as the Dodgers are prone to do. You never know if they're playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers, or if maybe they flew a little too close to the sun, but they have once again signed a premium free agent, Blake Snell, and deferred a bunch of money while they did it. But yet they are putting someone who can pitch anywhere from 1 to 3 for them, who is just about the best pitcher in baseball, even better than Tarek Skubal post All-Star break. Almost unhittable. His 2 Cy Youngs really figured things out a lot this year in San Francisco, and he's going to a team that really understands how to optimize pitching. Should be fascinating. Now we'll team with ex-teammate Tyler Glasnow as Los Angeles and Andrew Friedman draft picks now are reuniting on the left coast for lots of money, but still great. What do you think about that one?
I think the rich get richer. I mean, 5 years, $182 million for Blake Snell to the Dodgers. It's so fascinating how the Dodgers have constructed, these contracts. For Blake Snell, it's annual salaries of $26 million for the next 5 years with $13 million each year deferred. So you have $65 million of the $130 million being deferred, and then a $52 million signing bonus. And that $52 million signing bonus, it's not subject to the California income tax because Snell is a resident in the state of Washington. So the way that it all works out is just mind-blowing. It's a deferred money, signing bonuses, no income tax on the signing bonuses. Like the way the Dodgers do things, it's just incredible to watch them work. And you know what? All owners have money, and the Dodgers are deciding to spend their money. That's just how they go about it, and they're going to spend their money to get the best players. Remember, the Tigers play the Dodgers in Los Angeles to open the 2025 season. The Tigers have Tarek Skubal, yes, but the Dodgers could start Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Blake Snell in that series, which I think is just ridiculous. That's a pretty tough task for the Tigers to face out of the gate in 2025.
I'm still fascinated at the idea that Tyler Glasnow could be your 4th starter. Holy smokes. In addition, the Dodgers did sign Tommy Edman to a contract that in many ways was a junior version of the Blake Snell deal. Big upfront bonus, affordable yearly salaries, and a pretty decent amount, about 30+% deferred. I heard a lot of people going, how come they're paying Tommy Edman that much money? But if you understand how the Dodgers play and how smart teams play, Tommy Edman plays premium defense at short, second, and center field and hits enough to deserve the play. When you have that much flexibility, it allows you to do crazy kind of stuff like playing Mookie Betts at shortstop. Yeah, the Dodgers, good thing they spend their money. And I just want to let you know that there is a list showing what percent of revenues teams are spending on payroll. And I think I saw the Tigers were either 26th or 27th on that list at 38%. And that's all I have to say about that. And so when they are asked to spend some money on some legitimate players in free agency or taking on contracts and trades, I think it's a fair ask. We could talk a little bit about that either later or next week, but I think it's something we need to address. In fairness of what's going on down there, you can't always be the smartest guy in the room. And I think I've said many times in the last year, I'm not so sure it's Chris Ilitch telling him not to spend money. I really think Chris is probably more than willing to spend $130 million on payroll. So the question is, what are you going to spend it on? You hear anything about that, or we want to save that for next week?
I mean, look, I think ultimately it comes down to the decision that the Tigers want to make moving forward, whether that's Chris Ilitch, Scott Harris, Jeff Greenberg, AJ Hinch, like all these guys are getting together and they're coming up with the plan. Like, I think that, whatever way you go, you got to improve the team. So you want to do that internally? Fine. You want to do that externally? Fine. You want to wait till the time is right to spend? Like, I get it. We've heard that preached over and over and over again. The question being like, when is the time right? Was the time right when the Tigers went out and spent on Javier Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez? It sure seemed like the time was right. Riley Green was coming. Spencer Torkelson was coming. The pitchers were there. Tarek Skubal, Casey Mize, Matt Manning. It seemed like the time was right to spend, and spending set them back. So I think there's many ways to look at it. Like, if it makes sense to spend and go get a guy, then go get a guy. But if you're going to spend just to spend, I'm not so sure. Let's not forget what the Dodgers have done, by the way. Not only have they spent, but they have an insane player development department. And they are able to just churn out prospects over and over and over again. They draft as well, if not better than everybody else. They develop as well, if not better than everyone else. And then they go out and they spend at the top of the market, but they have the other things in place to have a well-run organization. I think the Tigers were behind in that aspect. And under Scott Harris, they've done a better job of catching up in both, how they draft, how they develop. And I think once you see that kind of come through the minor leagues and come into the big leagues, then maybe you can talk a little bit more about spending big and getting a little bit more aggressive on the open market. But there are other ways to upgrade your team. You don't have to just go and spend money to get better. You can get better developmentally through the minor leagues. You can get better by making trades. Like, there are ways that a team can improve and become a playoff team and a consistent playoff team without spending at the very, very, very top of the market. Like, there are good teams that do not spend at the tippy top of the market, like the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I don't know. I think to compare a team like the Tigers to the Dodgers is a little bit unfair. I just because of the fact that I think the Dodgers are a more well-run organization historically than the Tigers are. The Tigers have been playing a lot of catch-up, and they have been catching up. They've turned their organization into a pitching factory. Look what they did with Michael Lorenzen. Look what they did with Jack Flaherty. Look at what they've done with guys like Sean Gunther and Brennan Hanifee coming up and taking down huge innings in big roles and figuring out exactly what types of pitches work for them and how their body needs to move to unlock the best versions of themselves. They've optimized pitchers. They are a pitching factory. They've caught up in that sense. But there are other areas that they need to catch up in before we really talk about spending big. I think a lot of that comes from the continued development of young players into the big leagues. And then we'll see what happens. And then, like, again, once you figure out what your needs are, once you got to make some extensions, maybe that's when you go and you pay a Tarek Skubal, or you pay a Riley Green to stick around, or you pay a Kerry Carpenter if he can turn into an everyday player who doesn't just hit against right-handed pitchers, but he also hits against left-handed pitchers. We'll see how things play out. Maybe you lock up a Max Clark down the road or a Kevin McGonigal. I'm just interested to see kind of how Scott Harris's vision unfolds over time. And then I think we can talk more about spending big, big money like that. They're just not there yet, man. They're just not, organizationally speaking.
I'd argue that with you. Who was the number one ranked team at developing hitting and the production of their hitters in the minor leagues this year using the Baseball America metric? What minor league system was that again? Was the Detroit Tigers. And a pretty good core of hitters. And
well, if their minor leagues are so great, then get them up in the big leagues and let's ride. There's no need to spend money then. If all the players in the minor leagues are the best hitters in the minors, then you know what? You got a stacked team. You have a big league team full of all-stars then. Call them all up now.
Yeah, well, I think we know better than that, because a player that checked every metric, when you see that Baseball America metric about, hitting plus, was Colt Keith. And Colt had a really good year, but it just goes to show you, no matter how good you are, it's really tough to be good your first year hitting in the major leagues. He was pretty good, but he wasn't full Colt Keith yet. So when you're telling me
which
got
is
guys
exactly why I like to see them take some time and give guys opportunity and give them some runaway. I don't think that that's a bad way of going about it, as opposed to spending money and blocking players. And I understand, like, you want them to be good now, you want them to spend money, but I don't think spending money just solves everything. Like, Colt Keith, I think, is going to take a big step in 2025. Kevin McGonigal might come up at some point. He might struggle in year one, but he might take a huge step in year two. Like, I'm not ready to just cast away those guys because we can go and pay somebody to come here and play, when you got to see this thing through. If you're developing players and you have an organizational philosophy, like, let's see it through and then let's supplement off of that. Again, I think we're getting a little bit into the weeds, Mark, but it is an interesting conversation. But again, like, the development's been great. The Tigers have done a really good job of really reaffirming themselves, putting themselves back into the picture of a team that can develop players. They were really far behind for a really long time, and they've caught up on the pitching side in particular. And now we're seeing the fruits of that labor on the hitting side. Let's see those guys get in the big leagues and play. Like, I'm all for that.
I don't think that there's anybody coming up through the minor leagues that's blocked by anybody, but they don't have a third baseman. And if they think they have a first baseman, they're kind of kidding themselves. Hopefully they'll, in some way, shape or form, address those two needs, A. And B, I think, to get back to one thing about Blake Snell, it established, at least at worst, a floor for what Tarik Skubal is. And we've had this discussion many times, and I brought up my feeling about it. And the way the Tigers could go about Blake Snelling Tarik Skubal by paying him up front is to overpay him in these next 2 years and then pay him for 4 more years after, give him an opt-out maybe after year 4 for another chance, but do get him paid. We'll see what's up with that. All right. Right along with what we have been discussing, let's jump into question one of the big two. Who is the right-hand hitter you want the Detroit Tigers to acquire in trade or free agency, not named Alex Bregman? I'll let you lead off on that one, big man.
Yeah, I think we both agree that Alex Bregman would be a pretty good fit for the Detroit Tigers. But if not Alex Bregman, there are some good names out there. Jake Burger, Yandy Diaz, Paul Goldschmidt, Carlos Santana, Christian Walker. I like all of those names. Burger and Diaz would be trades. Goldschmidt, Santana, and Walker would be free agency. But you know who I like more than all those players? Ha-Seong Kim. And I'm told the Tigers had interest in Ha-Seong Kim. He just turned 29 years old. He has played 4 MLB seasons since coming over from Korea. Right-handed hitter, plays shortstop, second base, third base. He was an everyday shortstop for the 93-win San Diego Padres in 2024, but he's an elite defender at all 3 of those infield positions. He averaged 36 stolen bases and 17 home runs per 162 games over the past 2 seasons. He had a 749 OPS in 2023, then a 700 OPS in 2024. Now, this is according to Baseball Reference, so it's B-WAR, but Kim was worth 2.1 WAR in 2021, 4.9 WAR in 2022, 5.8 WAR in 2023, and 2.6 WAR in 2024. So it's been 4 good years in the big leagues. Elite on defense, including at shortstop. Great on the bases as a base stealer. Has some pop in the bat for 10-plus homers, even at Comerica Park. But here's what I love the most. His approach is incredible. He is the definition of everything the Tigers want their hitters to do. He ranks in the 98th percentile in chase rate, so he refuses to swing at pitches outside of the strike zone. He ranks in the 92nd percentile in whiff rate, so when he swings, he makes a ton of contact. And then he ranks in the 96th percentile in walk rate and the 81st percentile in strikeout rate. This is Ha-Seong Kim. He walks, he limits strikeouts, he makes contact, and he makes incredible swing decisions. And he plays elite defense, and he steals bases, and he plays shortstop, and he's a right-handed hitter. I mean, this guy is the perfect fit for the Tigers. And there's a bigger discussion to be had here as well, and it's the Javier Baez discussion. Remember, Baez has 3 years and $73 million remaining on his contract. If you have Ha-Seong Kim on the roster, then you're not married to the Javi Baez, Trey Sweeney shortstop platoon in the 2025 season. In a perfect world, maybe they're all on the roster together, along with Jace Young. But what if Sweeney continues to be average on defense and below average on offense? What if Javier Baez continues to be the worst hitter in baseball coming off hip surgery? Then where do you turn? You're not turning to Zach McKinstry. Imagine if the Tigers had a proven everyday shortstop ready to handle those types of reps. That would be Ha-Seong Kim. And if the Baez-Sweeney platoon, if that works out, then Kim splits his time between third base, shortstop, and second base. So like I said, the Tigers have interest in Ha-Seong Kim. What I don't know is whether or not Kim has any interest in joining the Tigers. Like, does this guy want to play in Detroit? I have no idea. Maybe he would rather be playing for the San Francisco Giants with his friend Jung-Hoo Lee and his former manager Bob Melvin. So I have no idea if Kim would actually consider the Tigers, but I've heard the Tigers like him. Now, there is something else we have to discuss with him. He suffered a labrum tear in his right shoulder that ended his 2024 season in mid-August. Then he underwent shoulder surgery in mid-October. He won't be ready to play in MLB games until late April or early May, so he won't be active for 2025 opening day on March 27th. He could miss a month of games or more than a month of games. So everything about Kim's free agent market changes, right? When he undergoes the shoulder surgery, he was going to be a top free agent on the market, positioned for a 9-figure contract. He was going to get more than $100 million. But now there is long-term uncertainty about his throwing arm, and he's going to miss games. So the surgery and everything that came with that makes for an uncertain market. And that makes me wonder what Kim wants. Does he want a 1-year contract to prove his arm is fine, and then he returns to free agency next offseason in search of a longer-term contract that he would have received if not for the shoulder surgery? Or does he want to get as much job security and money as possible, even if that's a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal that maybe limits his long-term earnings based on his age, but allows him to get the most that he can get now, just in case that shoulder doesn't hold up coming back from surgery. So we'll see how things play out, but I think Ha-Seong Kim is someone to keep an eye on. Mark, what do you think about Kim? And do you have a different right-handed hitter that you like to see the Tigers acquire, either in free agency or trade? Because, like I said, a lot of good names. Yandy Diaz, Jake Berger, Christian Walker, maybe even Nolan Arenado. But Ha-Seong Kim, it just makes a lot of sense, huh?
Makes a lot of sense. Solid player, not a great player, not an all-star level player, not necessarily a run producer. Has improved each of his years with the Padres. Not so sure he's a legit shortstop until he shows me with labrum surgery, and that's what you're paying him to play.
It's a big red flag.
It's a big red flag. Do I like him? Yeah. Do I love him? Probably not. Would I prefer that they pursued Willy Adames? Absolutely. I would rather see him pay $8 million more a year and add 2 more years onto it to get Willy Adames. Willy Adames can play adequate shortstop, even though he wasn't great last year, and he can bang, and he has some affinity for making the big swing. Heck, he was hitting number 4 from Milwaukee last year. My point is, makes things happen. And if his defense diminishes a little bit 2 years from now, ship him over to third base, and I'm sure you get some more good years off of him. He's also 29 years old. He's not exactly old either. By the way, same age Javier Baez was when the Tigers signed him.
And I was just going to say, he gives me a lot of Javier vibes when you look at Willy Adames as a guy who's in the 21st percentile in whiff rate, a 28th percentile in strikeout rate. I mean, he chases a fair amount. Like, this guy swings and misses quite a bit. He strikes out. He does draw walks, which is different. He's going to walk for you, which is a huge bonus. But at the same time, the swing and miss, it worries me a little bit.
Every player has faults, so get ready to have them magnified when you pay him a bunch of money. But if you're asking me about what to do about Kim, my answer was I'd much rather spend the money on Willy Adames. I have a question for you, though. If we're talking right-hand hitters, I'm assuming we're not interested in guys like Jurickson Profar and Anthony Santander, huh?
Santander could be an interesting choice, of course, as a guy who's a switch hitter. Jurickson Profar, somebody the Tigers haven't been interested in him in any of his free agencies going back quite a while. So I don't see him as a fit just because there's not any history there. Anthony Santander, I mean, again, you love the power. You love what he was able to do for the Baltimore Orioles. You like the switch hit component. I'll be interested to see what his market actually looks like as a guy who, I mean, I don't really know defensively how he fits in with what the Tigers have either. I mean, he's pretty much a right field only at this point, and as he gets older, you're probably going to need to play him more at the DH spot. The Tigers have plenty of outfielders to go around. I don't see him as a natural fit. Again, I think they just need more help in the infield. Like, we talk about it over and over again. Like, they need a third baseman. They need a right-handed hitting infielder, somebody that can play on the dirt and bats right-handed. And Ha-Seong Kim makes a lot of sense. But like I said, there are other players that make sense too. Like Christian Walker makes a lot of sense. Jake Berger, a guy who plays first base and third base, makes a lot of sense. You know, yeah, Yandy Diaz, he makes sense as a first baseman. If you want to go that route and get a first base only type player, he works as well. Nolan Arenado is somebody whose name has been kicked around in trade conversations. I have no idea if he's actually a fit for the Tigers or if the Tigers are actually even interested in him. But Nolan Arenado could make some sense if the Tigers wanted to go that route and the Cardinals were willing to eat some of the money on that contract. Like, there are other players out there who make a lot of sense. I'm just saying I've heard the Tigers have interest in Ha-Seong Kim, and that's a name we got to talk about.
Well, like I said, Christian Walker, Jake Berger, love those ideas. Think they're really, really good ideas. What worries me is if they do something like, sign Brandon Drury to play third base. That's what I'm trying to avoid, And at the same time, I want to refresh everyone's memory. Evan Petzold had a really good discussion with Scott Harris, and they talked about it. And he seemed more than comfortable, if he had to, playing Matt Vierling at third base, did he not?
Well, that was the thing that Scott Harris came out and said. He said, look, like if we want to go and get an outfielder, maybe an Anthony Santander, let's just say, again, I'm using that as an example, but if they were to go get an outfielder, a real bat in the outfield, a real right-handed hitter, they have the flexibility to move Matt Vierling to the infield. If they get an infielder, like a Ha-Seong Kim, for example, they have the flexibility to play Matt Vierling in the outfield. So having Matt Vierling as a guy who can play third base and the outfield position, it really does benefit the Tigers in the way in which they're able to go out and look on the free agent market and the trade market. Those things are definitely pluses. It's a benefit for sure to be able to have that kind of positional flexibility with Matt Vierling. But yeah, if they go out and get an outfielder, sure, Matt Vierling can play more third base. I think in an ideal world, though, Matt Vierling plays outfield. He's a better outfielder than he is a third baseman. And that's something that just based on the eye test, based on the metrics, it sure seems that way. But yes, the Tigers do feel comfortable playing Matt Vierling at third base if needed, if that means they can go out and they can get a legit bat in the outfield. But again, I think it just makes more sense to go get somebody to play on the infield. It just makes more sense based on what they have in the infield already, the way their outfield's constructed, the fact that they already have, they have 3 left-handed hitting outfielders. Having Matt Vierling as another outfielder who's a right-handed hitter is a huge bonus. But yeah, positional flexibility, that always helps.
I think Jake Berger's a really good call because he can play both corners. Probably hits 25 plus homers. Doesn't walk a ton, but does walk some. And the cost will be pretty meager. Wouldn't shock me if they try to go in that direction. And I'm eager to see what happens. And next week, maybe we'll see a few things. All right, let's jump into question 2 of the big 2. Should the Tigers turn Wenceel Pérez into more than just an outfielder? And we've talked about this before. And Wenceel is a pretty big favorite of both Evan Petzold and Mark Gorash. Give me your thoughts on what do you think will happen in year 2 of Wenceel Pérez?
So I actually asked President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris this exact question at the general manager meetings in early November. I wanted to know if he had any thoughts about Pérez playing the infield. Here's what Scott Harris said. Quote, "We haven't really had that conversation. We're going to probably have it with the infield guys. But the fact that he's a switch hitter that can play all 3 outfield positions is a good start." End quote. I don't want to pick apart that quote too much because, again, it was just his quick way of saying, haven't talked about it with Wenceel Pérez, probably going to have that conversation with, the infield coaches, but it's a good start that he's comfortable in the outfield. And I do want to say hat tip to Wenceel Pérez for his development in the outfield because the Tigers, they moved him to the outfield and there were a lot of question marks and he did not look good in spring training. And he got really good really quick, especially in right field. Looks really, really comfortable. He's not a center fielder. And he's a right fielder. Okay. He's not a center fielder. There's no question about that. We saw him in center field. It wasn't great. He's a right fielder, left fielder, right fielder, but he's not a center fielder. The point is, though, he was able to play all 3 outfield positions. I think what we need to remember, though, is Wenceel Pérez used to be an infielder. For people that don't remember that, he was a shortstop coming out of the Dominican Republic. Then he shifted to second base, but his throwing accuracy was so bad that the Tigers introduced outfield in 2023 and made the full-time transition to outfield in 2024. So Pérez has played second base as recently as 2023, but again, the throwing was just terrible. And now I look at the opening day roster. I look at 13 position players on the opening day roster. Quick rundown: Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter, Matt Vierling, Riley Green, Colt Keith, Spencer Torkelson, Jace Young, Trey Sweeney, Jake Rogers, Dylan Dingler, Javier Baez, Andy Ibanez, Zach McKinstry. Those are 13 players, and I did not mention Wenceel Pérez. So who are you cutting from that list to make room for Wenceel Pérez? Heck, who are you cutting for Justyn-Henry Malloy? That's a conversation for another day. Let's stick with Wenceel Pérez. But who do you cut from that list? Maybe it's Baez, maybe it's Sweeney, maybe it's Torkelson. Let's say you're able to find a spot for Pérez, and I think the Tigers will. He's one of the 13 players, and I think he should be, especially because he's the only switch hitter too. But you have 5 players who are best in the outfield: Parker Meadows, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Matt Vierling, and Wenceel Pérez. How often does Pérez start over those 4 players? He's not starting over Parker Meadows, not over Riley Green, not over Kerry Carpenter, and he's not starting over Matt Vierling. Yes, when Kerry Carpenter is in the DH spot, that opens some things up, no doubt about it. But imagine if Wenceel Pérez could play the infield as well. Maybe he steals some starts at second base, third base, maybe even shortstop. Then he gets the occasional starts in right field. That would basically make him an everyday player, but that type of usage doesn't happen unless he plays the infield. I think Minnesota Twins utility player Willie Castro, an all-star in 2024, whom the Tigers cut back in November of 2022, is a perfect example of what Pérez could become. In 2024, Willie Castro started 51 games at shortstop, 31 games at second base, 30 games in left field, 24 games in center field, and 14 games at third base. He played 158 games for the Twins. He received 635 plate appearances. He hit .248 with 12 home runs and a .717 OPS. Wenceel Pérez can do that. He can put up those kind of numbers. He makes way more contact at the plate, but he's not going to sniff that kind of usage if he's an outfield-only player. So for Wenceel Pérez to be a real everyday guy, he's got to do one of two things. He needs to hit 30-plus homers as a right fielder, or he needs to play the infield again. I think playing the infield is much more likely than hitting 30-plus homers, especially because he's already played the infield before. So for a team like the Tigers that preaches defensive versatility, it makes way too much sense not to try. And reading between the lines based on what Scott Harris said, it seems like he's at least open to the idea of having that conversation with the infield coaches, thinks it's a good start that, he was able to play all three outfield positions and show that he could do that as a switch hitter in the big leagues. But why not give it a shot? Why not give it a shot? I like the idea of expanding someone's defensive versatility if it's possible. And with Wenceel Pérez, he's a big leaguer. He's a big leaguer. He can make those throws from second base. He can make those throws from shortstop and from third base. He can do that. He's a much more confident player today than he was 2 years ago. He did not have confidence 2 years ago. He is a much more confident player now. I love to see the Tigers go down that route. I think they might give it a go. We'll see if it actually happens. And if it does happen, we'll see how it turns out.
I don't think there's any question, whether it's in public or in private, that, Wenceel Pérez is going to see how he fares on the infield. More than having throwing problems, he pretty much had the yips throwing. It's the biggest reason why they shifted him to the outfield. But when you discuss the pecking order of the outfield, I got to tell you, I have a slight difference of opinion with you. I wouldn't consider it an argument. I just would consider it a difference of opinion. And that is, I think as an outfielder, Pérez is ahead of Matt Vierling. Matt Vierling should be pretty worried. I think Pérez is going to take his at-bats. Just more versatile, makes more things happen, and not a worse defender either. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with that situation. But, Wenceel Pérez got a lot of preferential treatment because A.J. Hinch thinks he can play. He went right back in the lineup almost immediately after injury, and prior to injury, he was playing almost every day. So there's reasons for that. And, A.J. doesn't play it for no reason. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we got a special guest, of course, this week. We're joined by Detroit Tigers pitching prospect, relief prospect, TJ rehabber, Tyler Madison. We'll be back in 60.
I'd like to welcome Tyler Madison, right-handed reliever for the Detroit Tigers and one of the newest members of the 40-man roster to the Days of Roar podcast for the first time. Tyler, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So before we dive into baseball, I couldn't help but notice on your Instagram, you have a photo of you with a real nice buck back in November of 2022. Looked like at least a 10-point. What's the story of getting that buck? And have you gotten to hunt this year at all?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I haven't got out to hunt yet, but a group of family friends of ours, we lease a plot of land out in Pennsylvania. And that was the first year of going out there, so we didn't really know how the land was. And I ended up that morning seeing a couple bucks, letting them go. And then I was like, let me go back out afternoon, sit in the same stand, and had that monster walk out to me. And my heart was racing, and, I ended up shooting it, and, I ended up being able to harvest it. And it was pretty cool having my dad. I called my dad, and he came over to the stand, and we tracked it, and got to run up on it at the same time. So really cool memory to have. But yeah, it was huge. The biggest buck I ever shot, nice 11-pointer. So it's just super pumped about it.
For sure. So shifting gears to baseball, obviously added to the 40-man roster. That happened on November 19th. What was it like, man, waiting to find out if the Tigers were going to protect you from the Rule 5 draft? I'm sure you're just sitting there watching your phone, waiting for a call, not knowing whether you're going to get it or not get it. Take me through that experience.
Yeah, it was a heck of a day for sure. The deadline was 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. So that day, I did my throwing, did my lifting, but obviously in the back of my head, like I was just checking my phone constantly, seeing if there's going to be a call, all that. But I knew it was going to be a last minute ordeal just with obviously trades or anything that happens and all that. So I knew it was going to be right around the 6 o'clock mark. And I was down in my room and it was like 5:30 and I got a call from Garco and, he said, we're going to add you to the 40 man. And, I was super pumped and, just honored to be one of the names I got added.
So Ryan Garco gives you a call. What does it mean to you to be added to the 40-man roster? I mean, everybody who makes their MLB debut, like you have to be on the 40-man roster to make your big league debut. So it puts you one step closer. Ryan Garco calls. You have that moment. What is it kind of like as you reflect back on it now?
Yeah, it was awesome. Like you said, everyone's got to get on it to get to the bigs, and it's another step in the right direction. And it just shows that they have a lot of confidence in me and moving forward. So that's awesome. And obviously the run that the Tigers went on this year was awesome to watch. And it's a young core of guys and a lot of guys that I've played with, a lot of my friends up there. So to hopefully be able to get a chance to be a part of that is really special. It gives you a little bit more motivation. When they say, hey, like we believe in you, and coming back from injury and everything just gives you a little more jolt of energy, when you're training, when you're throwing. So, now I'm really chomping at the bit to get back to spring and, get the ball rolling.
You mentioned watching the Tigers run to the postseason and then getting into the postseason and winning a series against the Houston Astros, obviously falling short against the Cleveland Guardians. But what was it like for you as a prospect, sitting back and kind of watching what unfolded at the end of the 2024 season? And I guess, what do you think about that as you look to the future of the Tigers, right? And you say, okay, what can this team be in the future with me on the roster maybe one day? How does kind of all that play out in your head?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see, an organization who's kind of had, some hardship for the last, decade or so of it. And, it's really cool to see winning. The winning just solves everything, and just be able to watch that. And, like I said earlier, like seeing a lot of the guys that I've played with and, a lot of those big leaguers that have been here for us, and to see them finally turn that page and turn that corner and really start to become a winning franchise again is awesome. And, it just, like I said, it just gives you a lot of motivation, to try to be there and earn a spot there and be part of a winning culture. So it's really cool. It's really exciting to be, a Tigers fan, to be a Tigers player. Anything to do with Detroit sports right now is awesome. So just trying to compete with there and, just really focusing for this season and try to, make it farther in the postseason.
So to become a Tiger, you were drafted in the 4th round in 2021 out of Bryant University. You were a starter back in college, but the Tigers immediately made you a reliever when you made your professional debut in 2022. What was that conversation like, and what do you think allows you to thrive out of the bullpen?
Yeah, I just, like you said, I started all year in my college career, basically. So I was normally a starter routine, all of that. But they sat down and just said, hey, like, we think your stuff plays a lot better out of the bullpen. And, we want you to develop into like a high leverage back end type guy. And so I was like, that sounds great to me. And, it was a little adjustment period for me to get used to it. But, you change your mentality of, hey, like, I don't need to face the lineup 2-3 times. Like, I'm going out there and firing my best stuff every single time out. So I love it because there's a chance to compete every single day. And, like, when you get your name called down there in the later innings and it's a close game, like, it's pressure's on you to come through for your teammates. So it's awesome. The lights are shining brightest, 8th, 9th inning. And, big situations you come into, you need a couple punch outs to get out of it. It's an awesome feeling. So, just getting more and more comfortable in that type of role.
You mentioned the adjustment period. What was that like for you? Because you hear about, pitchers all the time, like they want to be starters. And sometimes, being a reliever, like it's a little bit difficult to swallow that pill. But I mean, you were nasty at Bryant as a starter and now you're nasty out of the bullpen. Your stuff plays, like you said. How long did it take you to adjust the mindset of like, okay, I'm a starter. Now I'm a reliever. This is going to be my future. This is how I'm going to get to the big leagues. This is how I'm going to perform in the big leagues. Like obviously the road has been mapped out for you coming out of the bullpen. How long does it take to adjust to that?
Yeah, I mean, it took me right around my first full year to really get used to it. I had like a little shoulder thing for a couple months that kept me sidelined and, really delayed my pro ball experience, and earlier in the season when I first came back, I ran some trouble with walks and I was trying to get too cute with pitches and everything. And I remember having a conversation with Gabe Rebus about like middle of August that first year. And he said, hey man, just go out there and just attack them with your best stuff. And like, if it gets hit in the zone, who cares? Like just be in the zone, attack. And from that time on, like my mentality has just been to attack. And, if I'm going down, I'm going to go down with my best stuff. And, when I put my head on the pillow, it's not like, hey, I was timid or I was afraid. Like, you know what? He got my best stuff today. He's a professional athlete too. But like more times than not, I'm going to try to go out there and win the battle. So that really changed my mindset going forward. And that's just kind of what I've kept going. And, I've had some success with it. So just continuing to build off that and, picking the minds of other guys who have been there and, go through that on a daily basis. So it's been great. And, I'm just excited to get back to that.
Obviously, you had a really successful 2023 season, and then you have Tommy John surgery. I think it was mid-March 2024. So I would assume that, gets you ready to pitch at some point early in the 2025 season. But what's been the recovery process like coming back from Tommy John? And where are you at now that it's been like 8 months or so?
Yeah, no, I feel great right now. Arm feels great, like a week away from touching the mound. So I'm really excited for that. But, obviously getting surgery in March and, having a pretty successful 2023, like I was really looking forward to coming back to 24 and, attacking it and everything. And then, you get surgery and it kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit, and the mentals were down for a little bit. I'll be honest, it sucked. Just like seeing everybody else playing and competing and not having that. And it just was really weird. And, but then you got to shift mentally to be like, all right, let me dominate my rehab to get back next year. So that way, when I start the year, I can hit the ground running and be back to who I was. So, I'm in a great place right now. Staff's been great, helping me out and, trying to make some adjustments here and there with, throwing or stuff and everything like that. But, once I start hitting the mound, I'll start feeling like a baseball player again.
For sure. What was it like too when you realized, okay, I've hurt my elbow, I need surgery, and then how long does it take you to kind of get back into the mode of like, okay, now I'm going to attack the rehab? Like there obviously is a period where you're going to sulk about it because it's disappointing news, but then how long does it take to get you back into rehab mode?
Yeah, I mean, about the first couple of weeks I was pretty down, but the first 2 weeks, like you're not doing too much. You're just sitting on the game ready and getting some inflammation down. But once you're able to start sweating and start moving around again, that's kind of when you got to shift your focus to like, all right, let me dominate this rehab. Let me really attack it. Even if it's the limited amount of stuff I can do, like let me get better each day. So that way, you keep stacking good days on good days, and then weeks turn into months, and then months turn into a year and all of that. And then you look back at it and be like, you know what, I worked my butt off to get back to where I am, proud to be where I'm at and, just get back to being healthy. So that way, there's no more setbacks. And that way I'm ready to get going right when I can.
So did you spend all of 2024 then in Lakeland rehabbing at the spring training facility?
I did, yes.
Okay, so what's your scouting report on Max Clark, assuming you jumped over and saw a few games?
Yeah, he's a great, first off, he's a great dude. He's a great clubhouse guy, great teammate. And yeah, I mean, you can see he's a freak athlete. And, he's a guy that, Tigers fans should be really excited about as he continues to develop and get more mature and everything. But yeah, he's an awesome dude and even better player.
And then Kevin McGonigal too, he can really hit, huh?
Yeah, he can swing it. Yeah, no, Kev's a great guy. He was in rehab a little bit with his handmate at the middle of the year. So I spent time with Kev and, I got to know him and he's an awesome, same thing, awesome kid to have around. And, but yeah, I mean, those two kids being high school guys and playing at the level they played at their first full season was pretty special. And, like I said, it's something to be really excited about as Tigers fans.
We need to talk about your 2023 season. You started in High A West Michigan. You were promoted to Double A Erie. You won the Eastern League Championship with Erie. You averaged 12.4 strikeouts per 9 innings with a 1.62 ERA for the Seawolves. When you look back at your 2023 as a whole, what was it like for you to have that kind of success?
Yeah, it was awesome. I was super excited to get promoted to Double A, because obviously it's a step closer to the big leagues. And, it was awesome. And I just had a lot of fun. The 2023 was a lot of fun for me. Obviously success helps that, but yeah, going out there every day, competing and just facing better hitters and, learning, hey, guys are going to have better approaches as you get better eyes at the plate. So learning how to attack them with your stuff and just continue that development. And like I said, the mindset was a big part with me and just really believing that I fit in there. And then, just attacking and seeing that I had success with that is, what I'm most excited about is to, get back to that and have that competing aspect. Cause that's the one thing I'm missing right now from what I'm doing is I'm just competing against myself. I'm not competing against anybody else. So I'm really itching to get back to competing like I did in 23. And, I'm looking to have a lot of fun next year.
You mentioned earlier your conversation that you had with Gabe Rebus about being inside the strike zone. How scary is that as a pitcher sometimes to trust your stuff inside the zone? How do you then figure out how to trust your stuff? And then what is it like when you do see that success of like, okay, I can throw my stuff in the zone and I can get hitters out and I'm going to be okay as long as I throw the ball over the zone and I'm not, walking too many guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great example of it was Skubal this year. You just saw him every time he took the ball, like he was just coming at you with everything he had. I mean, granted, his stuff is plus stuff, but he just had conviction with every pitch that he threw. And if you miss the middle with it, he's like, no big deal, like hit it. You know what I mean? So like he's, a great guy to watch with that. And yeah, like, that conversation with Rebus of trusting myself in the zone, like that timid mindset of, hey, like maybe my stuff doesn't play in the zone. Like you got to get rid of that, because once you get over that hump and you're just like, you throw with conviction and you really believe and you trust your stuff, like that's when I saw, a complete 180 with my results and just the outs that I was getting and, the quicker at bats that I was having. So yeah, that was huge in my development and, something I got to keep sticking with every time I go out.
Tell me about your stuff too. What do you throw? How hard do you throw? And how does your pitch mix play into your strengths?
Yeah, I'm a four seam guy. I try to ride it and then, try to throw a harder curveball over the top that plays off of it. And then, I throw a little bit of a changeup that fades a little bit down into righty and away from a lefty. But yeah, I mean, I'm right around like mid 90s, I'd say, with my heater pretty consistently. But yeah, I'm a more of a north south type guy. If you see me pitch, like I'm, up, down. And that's just kind of, a guy that I try to emulate is, a guy that went to college at Bryant. His name is James Karinchak, plays with the Guardians, and his stuff and my stuff are, similar. We throw similar arm slots and, so I try to, pick up what he's doing and, I'll talk to him a little bit and he'll give me some pointers here and there about it. And, just trying to have that mentality of like, hey, like, I want to be a high leverage guy. I want to be a guy that, Skip can trust to put in big situations when you need big timeouts. And so that's what, I try to get my stuff to be like and, get in those situations and get comfortable. So that way, when they do happen, it's not anything new for me.
So James Karinchak has had a ton of, success at the big league level. How do you kind of compare your game and his game and the style that you guys go about it? I know you mentioned the arm slot, maybe some of the pitches too, but how do you kind of compare and contrast? And how much have you been able to really watch as he's gone about his career, to model yourself after him?
Yeah, I mean, when I was getting recruited to college, I remember, the coach saying that, like, this is the guy you want to emulate. Like, this is the guy you want to be like. He's a hard worker, and his stuff's really good. And, so anytime he's pitching, I always try to turn the game on to watch him pitch. And, because I feel like, again, we're super similar with how we throw, arm slot, all of that stuff. And, like you said, he's had a lot of success in the big leagues. So if guys having success, like, we might want to watch him. So, I try to do that and, just take a little pointers from him or a little cues that he gives me, for the past couple of years and see if something clicks with me. And, a couple of things have. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, always picking the brains of guys that have been in the big leagues and that have, had success up there because they're doing something right. So just always listening and trying to, pick up the little things you can here and there.
I also noticed you had a big velo boost from 2022 to 2023. What led to that?
I think just mindset of just being like, not being passive and trying to like spot up every single pitch. Just like, having conviction. And but also too, like mechanic wise, the pitching guys were great and, some drills early on to help me, maybe get my back leg or, help my front side stay closed a little bit longer. So just some things like that kind of clicked with me. And, like you said, was able to tick up in velo. And, again, that just helped me, have even more success.
The velo is one thing and changing the mechanics is another thing. Is that kind of the main way that you feel like you've developed or changed as a pitcher since the 2021 draft? Or are there other ways too that you feel like the Tigers player development system has been able to help you elevate your game?
Yeah, I think the biggest change for me is just mentality. It is just being like a guy out there and just trying to be a fierce competitor every time you touch the ball and just being like, screw it. I'm just going to go out there and just try to throw this ball by you and get you out. And, just really believing that deep down inside and having that conviction. But yeah, obviously too, like having good mechanics and throwing harder and having good stuff, like that helps. You have a good breaking ball that guys, swing and miss at a lot, or, you throw hard or, you have a good changeup, like whatever it is that you have, like that helps. But like having that mindset with it has been the biggest game changer for me.
I know you're coming back from Tommy John surgery, but what are your goals for 2025? Obviously, you got to get healthy first and you got to get back on the mound. But once that happens, what are you looking to do in 2025, especially now that you're on the 40-man?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal doesn't change of getting to the big leagues, but it's not just getting there, it's trying to stay there, and helping the Tigers win at the highest level. But, before I can get there, like you said, got to get healthy, got to get back to, feeling good and all of that. So that's the exciting part is, being added to the 40. It's kind of like, okay, they do really believe in me. So let me get healthy so that way I can get back to who I was. And then I can show them that, hey, I can help you at the big league level. So that's where my mindset is right now.
All right, Tyler, that's all we have for you, but thanks for joining. We appreciate your time. Wish you the best as you continue recovering from Tommy John surgery and can't wait to see you on the mound again in 2025. Thanks again for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Everyone, that was Tyler Madison, Detroit Tigers right-handed reliever. We're going to take a break, but we have more to discuss about the Tigers, so don't go anywhere.
like to thank Tyler Madison. Hopefully he gets rehabbed before or right around the All-Star break maybe, and could contribute to the 2025 Detroit Tigers bullpen when you throw 95 with a good array. I think he has a good split, right? Probably at one point in time was the highest ranking Tiger reliever prospect. Hope he has a good rehab and maybe can show us some stuff this year. Guys that throw 98 and get people out are always welcome at the major league level. All right. We're going to try to discuss a little bit. I already talked about Wenceel Pérez, but there's some other Tigers that may be worthy of giving some consideration to for position changes. And I just want to remind everybody, from year to year, your team turns over like 25%. So guys you never thought were going to really do too much end up being integral parts of your team. I think Wenceel Pérez is a perfect example of that. But, there's some guys that we need to discuss that may need to change positions in order to get more at bats. At the top of that list is none other than Justyn-Henry Malloy. And you did talk to Scott Harris a little bit about that. We talked to Mike Farron about it one day. What are your thoughts on what they need to do to get J-Hen more at bats? He did have some growth in his approach, and I think he surprised us in a good way in 2024. So if he continues to grow, where are they playing him?
I did ask Scott Harris about Justyn-Henry Malloy playing first base at the general manager meetings. The response to that was a little bit different than the response that he had about Wenceel Pérez. He basically said that the Tigers don't know if J-Hen can play first base. And then I said, okay, are you even going to try? And he mentioned that they would address that in spring training. So it was pretty short. There wasn't a whole lot more than that. Like, that was kind of it. It was like, we don't know, and we'll address it in spring training. So whatever that means, not really sure. You can read between the lines if you want. I gave it my best to try to figure out. Tell me the Tigers don't want to comment on any conversation that they're having with players behind the scenes. Can totally understand that. But you wonder, like, why hasn't Justyn-Henry Malloy moved to first base yet? You would think that he would, right? Like, this is a guy who has shown that he cannot play third base. He cannot play the corner outfield positions. He's a DH only player, and first base seems like it would be the only fit for him, but it hasn't happened yet. It's like, why hasn't it happened yet, though? Like, you have a guy who has shown some power. Yes, the swing and miss is a real concern. And again, I know he does draw his walks, but like, the strikeout concerns are real, both takes around the outer edge and then also swinging and missing, just like not making enough contact when he swings at pitches inside the strike zone. But he's got some pop. He knows how to draw a walk. He knows how to work an at bat. Like, there are things that you like about his game. You want to see more at bats and more opportunity. He's ranked at the AAA level. He doesn't need any more time with Toledo, but there's really no room for a DH only type player. Imagine if he did play first base, but Tigers haven't taken that route yet. Like, and maybe they're going to try this offseason, but I think it says something though, that like, for a guy who can't play third base, can't play corner outfield, and the Tigers still haven't given him the first baseman's glove. Like, I wonder if it's just like, hey, there's no way. So maybe we'll find out when we get to spring training. Maybe we'll find out a little bit later in the offseason if the Tigers are actually exploring that a little bit more. It sure makes a whole lot of sense, but doesn't Colt Keith to first base make sense too? Doesn't Jace Young to first base make some sense too? Like, big picture I'm talking. I'm not saying immediately for those two players. For J-Hen, yeah, maybe immediately. But Colt Keith to first base in the long term, for sure. Jace Young to first base in the long term. If he's not going to play second base because Colt Keith is at second base, maybe Jace Young needs to go play first base. Like, there are a lot of things that are interesting to talk about when we talk about the Tigers and their young players and where they're going to play. Obviously, J-Hen is like at the top of that list just because there really is no position for him at all. But Colt Keith, yes, he got a lot better at second base, still a below average second baseman. Jace Young looks like a below average third baseman. Where do you put these guys if you want to get their bat in the lineup? It's a big question, Mark.
Well, I think that Jace Young can hit. I definitely don't think he's a third baseman. So it leaves you with the exact question you just posed. I mean, if Colt Keith's going to be the second baseman, my answer is Jace Young's probably somebody that's going to be in a deal for something you would think is pretty good.
But if you think he can hit and you want to get his bat in the lineup, I don't think you're just trading him for no reason. That's why, like, I'm not so sure the Tigers need a player like Christian Walker. I know that's like a crazy stretch to make from, is Colt Keith or Jace Young or Justyn-Henry Malloy going to play first base? But like, I don't know, like, it makes me think twice about signing Christian Walker for 3 years or trading for 2 years of Yandy Diaz. Colt Keith is going to play first base for the Tigers at some point in the final 5 years of his contract. He has 5 years remaining, plus those 3 option years, he's not staying at second base. The Tigers know it. The industry knows it. I know it. I just don't think it's going to happen. On top of that, the Tigers have a bunch of guys who can't play defense. Malloy and Jace Young. And then you have Thyron Lorenzo and Josue Briseño as some of your top hitting prospects in the minor leagues. Both of those guys are catchers, but Briseño is definitely a first baseman, and the Tigers are trying to save Lorenzo from being a first baseman. So here are your first basemen of the future. Colt Keith, Jace Young, Josue Briseño, maybe Thyron Lorenzo, and that's not counting Justyn-Henry Malloy as a potential first base option. And let's not forget, Spencer Torkelson, as we speak today, is still on the roster, and he did hit 30-plus home runs in 2023, and he did improve his defense at first base in 2024. Like, I like Christian Walker as much as anyone, but I don't know, like, why do the Tigers need to sign a first base only player to a multi-year contract or trade for a first base only player when they have so many guys without a position currently? I don't think that trading Jace Young is a bad idea in the right package, but if you really believe that this guy is going to hit, and I'm not so sure he's going to hit because he has not shown that he can hit 95 plus at the AAA level, there are some concerns for me with velocity. But I love the way that he puts up his at-bats. He's really gritty in the batter's box. Like, he's not somebody, if I'm a pitcher, I do not want to be facing Jace Young because I know he's going to battle. I don't like that. And I think there's pop in that bat. And I think he's going to take some time to come around. But when it comes around, again, it could be pretty good. So, like, if you want that bat in your lineup, and you maybe are thinking about moving a guy to first base, like, why do you go out and sign a first baseman? Or why do you go out and trade for a first baseman? Like, it's just another way of looking at things when you consider there are so many players in this organization, including guys in the minor leagues like Lorenzo and Briseño, who don't have positions right now and maybe suited for first base. Like, Josue Briseño is definitely going to be a first baseman. Thyron Lorenzo, hopefully he can stick at catcher, but if not, it's first base. It's first base if he doesn't stick at catcher. And even if he does stick at catcher, if you want his bat in the lineup, he's going to be playing a good amount of first base for you anyway. And that could be happening as soon as 2026. So, like, that's kind of where I'm at in this conversation. And I'm curious to get your thoughts because there are just so many players who don't really have homes defensively. And first base seems like a good fit, even for a guy like Colt Keith. Yes, Colt Keith could play second base for the Tigers for the entire 2025 season, but does he stick at second base in the long term? As he gets bigger, as he gets stronger, as he tries to get into more of his power, as he matures, gets older? I don't think so. You look at Colt Keith, that's a first baseman. That's a first baseman. So, like, I don't know. That's where I'm at with this whole conversation, and I want to know what you think.
Well, first of all, I don't think Colt Keith is a slam dunk first baseman anymore. I think he defended, really well, especially in the last, say, 90 games. He was more adequate, even above being adequate. He had 1 month he fielded poorly. I think our buddy Jerry Mackinnon did a pretty good study on that, and Colt was pretty damn good. If he progresses,
well, you get my point. You get my point.
I don't think he's moving to first base so fast. All right. The other thing is, and I've said this many times, I am tired, super tired. You don't make the playoffs and then start having discussions about what guys might be good 2 years from now. You need to get better now. You don't need to get better 2 years from now. They have a low payroll and they need help now. And when we're talking about Christian Walker and Yandy Diaz, you're talking about guys on 2. Yandy Diaz has 2 years left. Christian Walker probably take a 2+ or a 3-year deal. It's not like they're going to block anybody. I'm all on board having that discussion. That's another reason why they should be discussing Jake Burger with Miami. Plays both third and first. Fits perfectly into what we're discussing. You need major league power damage bats right now. You made the playoffs. If you're going to trot out the same nonsense, the same second tier $1 million Gio Urshela relative, play third base, you're going to try to sell us on the hope of Spencer Torkelson, and then you're going to be 5 weeks into the season and it's going to be bad, and then you're going to go, man, why did I let myself get talked into this idea again? Now what are we going to... You can't be doing that anymore. It's been a decade of telling yourself a story here. They need to take some assertive action and some element of risk. Period. End of story.
I don't disagree with you, Mark. I'm just trying to provide like a little bit of a different perspective. I'm not even saying that I agree with that perspective. It's just like another way of looking at things based on the fact that they have a lot of guys who seem like they're first basemen. That's all I'm trying to say. But I do think you're right. Like, there is no excuse for the Tigers not to put the foot on the gas a little bit and make some things happen, whether that be trade or free agency or, again, shifting some guys around. Like, if you really think that Justyn-Henry Malloy can be a huge boost to your offense, give him a first baseman's glove, teach him how to play first base, and stick him there and let him play. If you think that's an upgrade over Spencer Torkelson, let's do it. Like, let's do it now. Like, let's not wait. Let's do it now. So, like, I think there are multiple ways to be assertive. I'm just providing another way to do it. But yeah, like, look, I am all for signing Christian Walker and then signing Alex Bregman and then going out and signing like a frontline starter to pair with Tarek Skubal and then signing like a lockdown reliever like a Tanner Scott. I'm down to do all those kind of things. I just don't know if those are realistic things. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't want to mislead anybody by saying, yup, they're going to put the foot on the gas. They're going to go and get Walker. They're going to get Bregman. They're going to get Tanner Scott. And they're going to get, Corbin Burns. Like, that's not happening. Sorry, not happening. Can they maybe get one of those guys? Maybe. But again, they're not at the very forefront of the Alex Bregman conversation. They are not out front for him. Like I wrote this before, and this is the way that it's been. Like, he's not a priority. He is not top priority for the Tigers. So I don't want to preach gas pedal if it's not gas pedal right now. I think it should be, but I don't know if it is. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we're going to find out, because post-Thanksgiving last year, before the winter meetings, there were 5 or 6 transactions of note. I expect a few things to happen this week. Next week, when we return, we're going to do something we always like to do. You're going to get the Petzold list of who he'd like to trade for and who he may like to sign. We get the Gorash list, which has been going on for quite some time. And, I will be happy to share my 2019, 20, and 21 lists, which were really, really good at the time I did them. And I look back at them and I just asked myself, was I taking a lot of medication, and what was I thinking? I can't wait to do that. We'll do that next week before you jet off to Dallas, Texas for the winter meetings. We'll make that fun. We'll see what we can put together for good guests that might have some info about what might happen. We'll see who we can dig up for that. But guess what, Ev? It's time to get the heck out of here. I want to remind everybody to please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to Days of Roar, especially YouTube, which I hear is the big thing now. You can always find us embedded in every single Evan Petzold article at thefreep.com. I'd like to thank our Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the magic man, the man who saves us every week and who just saved me, Robin Chan, who I'd like to wish a Thanksgiving to. Love to my grandson, as I said, the spectacular Braden Michael Gorash, and shout out and happy Thanksgiving to Savannah Petzold. And until next week, I have to tell everyone, peace.